Welcome to Two and a Half Beards, where we think our artifice is eloquence, or providing as much perspective as three white, bearded, middle-class American males can provide. We're kind of in between on catchphrases right now. So, recently I went to Kansas City for an electronic music festival, and I had a great time, but that's a whole other different post. But while I was there, I stayed with a woman who lives in Kansas City using a service called Airbnb, which, if you haven't heard about it, is like couch surfing. There are a number of websites: couch surfing, Airbnb. I don't know. Those are the only two I know, but I know there are more. Trust me, or don't trust me. Go and Google it and find out. In any case, I had a great time staying with her, so I stayed with a real person rather than being in a hotel. And what happened was she cooked me breakfast one of the days, and it was a delicious breakfast. And when I got home yesterday, it was time for me to write a review on Airbnb.com about her. And I wrote, "She's wonderful and she's an excellent cook." And then I thought, wait a minute. I remembered back to that breakfast, and even though it was delicious, it was just eggs and toast. So, and all that she did, part of the reason it was so good was because she used farm fresh eggs. She made a big deal out of that. And she also had this really good seasoning salt that she put on the eggs. So I thought, well, hold on a minute. Is she really a good cook then? Because it was mostly due to the ingredients. I cook a lot of eggs at home. I have seasonings here too. I'm fairly good at it. So it must have been the ingredients that she used. And I thought, okay, well, does that mean that she's a good cook? Is she therefore not a good cook if it's due to her ingredients? And after thinking about it for a while, I decided, no, she is not disqualified from being a good cook. In fact, it marks her as a good cook because part of being a cook is selecting your ingredients. You wouldn't, for example, say of a builder that a builder who uses a really expensive hammer is less of a builder than someone who uses a crappy hammer. If the house is built really well, who cares? So even without technical mastery, even though her technical mastery of the craft of cooking maybe wasn't so good, she's still a good cook because she had this idea of this dish she wanted to make in her mind, and she made it. I mean, that's really what it's about, right? Cooking. It's about making food. And if you make that food, then you're good. You're a good cook. I was thinking about this too. This took me to Duke Ellington, who, if you don't know who that is probably the most famous, or tied for most famous, jazz person in history with Miles Davis, tied with Miles Davis. And you're also a tool, not a handy one, if you don't know who Duke Ellington is. In any case, famous jazz composer. And one of the things about that is that he wrote a lot of improvisation in his music. And one thing that was very special about Duke was that he wrote for the musicians he was using. And I remember in high school when I first was familiar with his music, I would look at it and say, well, there's all this hype. This guy isn't a good composer. He just wrote a bunch of scribbly lines here and wrote improvise over the top. But what he was doing was he was writing for the musicians in his band. And because he knew them so well, and he knew what they were going to do, and he knew how to get them to do things, he was using them as a tool for composition. And in that, when he did that, they became as valid and as useful as any other of the tools that he had for composing, like his extraordinary pianism, or his ability to write or read music, and all of his other training, his ear training, his knowledge of instruments, of scoring. So that's what I'm thinking about today is you don't have to have technical mastery in order to be good at what you do. You just have to know how to get the result that you want and be able to get it. It doesn't have to be complex for it to be worthwhile.